Welcome to the Village podcast. I am your host, Nicole Trumpio. My why has always been to empower women and amplify the voices of mothers. We created the Village to share stories and ideas to embody the innate wisdom of a village, but on a modern day platform. I hope this podcast inspires, educates, and informs you and brings you the joy, love, and light you deserve. Welcome to the Village. Our next guest today is a unicorn, Tai Haney. She's someone that I've always been inspired by. From the moment I met her, I felt her energy and I was like, you're magic. She has trailblazed for women in business. She is the most energetic, positive, and all-around amazing human. And we're so excited to be sitting with her today. She went up against Nike and Lululemon and built a company called Outdoor Voices, which had an incredible cult following and diehard community, which is something she really prides herself in. And then left that company, and we'll talk about that more, and went on to start a community building platform on Web3, which is built with collectibles like NFTs called TYB, Try Your Best, which we'll talk about, and an energy drink and gummy company called Joggy, which is amazing. I actually took one before we started recording, so let's see how my energy just
quite
vibrates.
The host here. Wow.
But we're really excited to be talking with you today for so many reasons, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. That's quite the introduction. I feel very honored. And we've known each other as friends and as mothers a lot, and as friends as business owners. So very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Your story is so, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. And you've made such an impact on women in business and also me as a mother, just to see the way that your partnership with your husband and your relationship with your children, it's so awesome. So we're going to get into that. But I wanted to start with, let's take it back to the beginning. Tell me about your childhood.
Tiny Tai.
Yeah.
It's funny timing because my family, we've gone back to Boulder, which is my hometown, for the last 3 months and lived in my childhood home. And so it's very nostalgic and familiar in that way, which is awesome. And we do the routines and kind of rituals that I grew up doing. And so we live in Boulder right under these kind of iconic mountains called the Flatiron Mountains. It's the park called Chautauqua, very outdoorsy. And so literally every morning as a kid, my mom would get her pile, us, my sister, my brother, and I, out of the door and moving. And that was something that she needed for herself. And then we learned through her is literally before school, we'd take this 30-minute loop up the Flatiron Mountains. And it's like a casual hike, but it is steep, especially for little ones. And so we've started doing that with Sonny and Champy, my daughter and son. Champy in the stroller, Sonny trotting next to me. It goes decently well.
Yeah.
So quite impressed that my mom made that such a thing for us. But fast forward, that's always been a through line in terms of making sure that you take care of your movement or your exercise, both for physical and kind of mental well-being. And that's probably the most core or strongest memory from my childhood, is always baking activity into everything we do, but in a very social, familial, kind of recreational way, not super intense, which came later.
That totally makes sense with what you're doing. You're moving your body to get endorphins flowing, and you're really promoting that recreation is good for everybody and you should be doing things, which was your hashtag slogan, in a really fun way, making exercise fun.
Yeah.
And that really interjected a new perspective on exercise, and then everyone copied you.
Yeah. It's so funny because I left OV 2 years ago now, and I'll kind of go into a mini soundbite on the backstory, but I walked into REI the other day and literally the entire floor, all these different active brands were the exact same material that we started with. And the language is very playful, which is good because ultimately my personal goal or mission would be, how do we get more people to realize how helpful moving on a daily basis can be? Yeah. And when I started Outdoor Voices, I had been an athlete throughout middle school and high school and quite intense, and then moved to New York City for art school at Parsons and found that I wasn't being active, and it really had a negative impact on me. And so I was like, well, it's not Nike anymore that's going to inspire me to be active. What's the new kind of inspiration? And so that's where Outdoor Voices was born. And really the headline there was, how do we free kind of this traditionally macho or like performance-based activewear space from the pressure to perform? And that's where Doing Things was born. And it really kind of hit a nerve with people, particularly that had graduated out of having like competitive sports and practice and coaches to keep you like active every day. And like, what's then that community that like does the same thing, but for a different part or chapter in life. And so Outdoor Voices, as I look back on it, really kind of our moat was this super passionate, engaged fan base that would show up to dog walks, exercise dress dances, like any activity that we did. And that was like very much the strength of the brand and the company. So it ties all the way back to Tiny Tai growing up in Boulder, which is full circle now being there with my family.
Yeah, and that was a really unique thing. So you took basically what your parents really, they laid a foundation for you, right? So were you getting up super early in the morning? Because I can't get up with a time to go take a hike before school with my kids. So
yeah.
How was that? I mean, that's like a real commitment from your parents.
It was with my mom. My dad didn't do it, and my mom has a twin, so often like they live a block apart.
Yeah.
In fact, we've connected through our neighbor's house, like a trail that's become our own, which is hilarious. I think he's worried that like there's something in real estate or property ownership that like if someone's taken that path more than you, they can like claim that piece of land.
I love
anyway,
that.
we did that. So we would always be up and at 'em. But
what time?
Probably it's not too early. Probably like 7:15. I think school started like 8:15 or 8:30. But I'm like wired to wake up early.
Yeah.
My husband's the opposite. I think I would imagine Gary is as well.
For sure.
Like he's a night owl.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just like instinctive and natural, and I feel best when I'm up early. So that's kind of, I think of it as kinetic meditation. Like getting out there and into nature is definitely more of a mental exercise for me. It
is. It's so incredible. And I think like that's why your platform TYB is so incredible, because you're really engaging community with events to connect us. Because I mean, my philosophy has always been we're really set up for failure because we should be living in a village, in a community where we can support one another as mothers. All the weight is not on one man to provide. It's like a collective, responsibility. Yeah. And I love TYB because I love that it's really, as soon as you come to one of the events, we did one with BUMPSUIT TYB. We've done a couple actually. And I myself afterwards am feeling like so great. And I remember going to Mommy and Me classes and like sitting in a room in a circle with strangers, and you're so tired and you're so just disconnected and still trying to figure out what's going on with you. And you're just like, okay, this is cool. But getting out and moving, it moves like the lymphatic system. It does something to your mind. It's mental health. It's so great.
Yeah. So we this morning actually just came from a BUMPSUIT Griffith Park walk, and it was, 40 moms and babies out today, and it was so much fun. But leaving, some people came without kids too, and they're like, I didn't expect this to be that much fun. So I think particularly as you become a mom, some work, some don't, different flavors of kind of motherhood, but you lose, it feels very isolating in a lot of ways, right? And so as I left this morning, kind of our second event together, it just felt like such a powerful opportunity and like a big mission and like noble cause to like really create a platform for like people to spark bonds, in a similar position in life. So it feels important, and it feels similar to OV in that way, in that there's a very clear mission to be like a community and resource for women ahead of motherhood, during motherhood, and after. And so I am very proud of you for what you've created, and it's very fun.
I'm inspired by you. Talking about, working moms or women in business, how was it at OV? Like, when did you decide that it was the right time for you and Mark to have a baby?
Yeah, it's funny. It wasn't like a discussed or conscious decision. It was more in the moment, potentially romantic and instinctive, which is cool. Yeah. Mark and I had met, and probably, 2 years later, he's a traveling musician as well. So he's gone often, and we were kind of reconvening at the San Cristobal, I think it's called, in Todos Santos. Literally, we were sitting at the pool my puppy Juice was there. And I'm not kidding. This like the most miniature little stork I've ever seen. I've never really seen a stork in person. Flew right between us. And I was reading The Alchemist. This sounds like I've made it up, but I didn't make it up.
Oh my God, I have proof. All over
and I'm
body.
reading The Alchemist, and this little tiny stork lands there, and Mark looks at me and is like, I think we're pregnant. So everyone has their own different version, but it certainly, I'm not much of a planner. I've gotten better at planning and brought people in who plan.
Yeah.
But that was our story, and then leaned into it very much so from there.
I love that.
But I remember as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I pinged you because you had Zion.
Yeah.
And you had kind of like entered into
I had
motherhood
Gia as well.
Did you have Gia?
I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense. She's older than Sonny. You had like been this model of gracefulness kind of entering into motherhood. And I remember we went on this walk. This is just kind of like a funny little moment. I remember you showing me this little picture of a cheetah mom and all these little cheetah cubs.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is my reference or kind of like vision for motherhood. And I still see it to this day. And you have 3 little cubs. There were 2 more, so we'll see. But I remember that conversation kind of being so important in terms of settling me, like, and giving me confidence that it would be okay, because it wasn't planned, which made it that much more scary.
Yeah. And it is okay. Like, we have everything in us. That you've done an amazing job. You're such a great mom. It is okay. But I remember something too that day that you told me. And I remember us talking about your friend that had just started a nail polish business. And I remember you talking about like, we always want more money, and we get taught to want more money, more investors, more funding. You were like, there's something really cool about like not having that. And that really inspired me. And that's actually something that I've held on to.
Yeah.
That piece of advice from you. When you look back and you say like, in retrospect, like what would you do better?
Yeah. We should have gone more slowly. And one thing I very much admire in terms of the way that you're building BUMPSUIT is it's like, you guys are obviously doing very well and growing very quickly, but it's like self-funded, and that puts the right amount of constraint on the business, and particularly businesses with inventory, because scaling like this, is not easy when you have to buy inventory and sell through that inventory and be very conscious of like how much cash or liquidity do we have. And as I think about like the right model, Patagonia, like this long-term view and this like long-term value creation is very much something that sticks in my mind. And if I were to build an Outdoor Voices again today, like that's what it would look like.
Do you think you will?
I think Joggy is an energy company. And I started it because I was drinking way too much Red Bull, and it has a ton of sugar and it has synthetic caffeine. Yeah. But Joggy has this same energetic spirit, and really like the mission with Joggy is to help people maximize happiness through movement. And so very much kind of like a continuation of my perspective when the vessel was Outdoor Voices, but Joggy will kind of fill that place. But from a back end and kind of like capital and ownership perspective, way different. Yeah. Like I'm so focused now on ownership and control and like the right amount of growth. And I'm not a patient person, but I've learned I have to be more systematic and patient. And so it's pretty cool to, as painful as 10% of the Outdoor Voices story was, I'm so grateful for the learnings, and really cool to be able to apply them now to TYB and Joggy. We launched Joggy last year and really focused kind of the first 8 months on getting product into the market ourselves, and then working with the community to provide feedback, refine the product, et cetera. And so we now have kind of community-led or community-influenced product that we've gotten all like a 2,000 Joggy doggy holders, which is the Joggy community,
Yeah.
has given us their feedback, etc. Naming, taste, flavor, carbonation, etc. So now we have this built-in 2,000 person kind of network of supporters and owners.
Just so you know what Ty's talking about, when you join the TYB community for brands, BUMPSUIT has one too. You can earn collectibles. So the Joggy Doggy is a collectible that only is a limited edition collectible that certain people get, and they get certain access to the brand. They get to choose things like the name, the color, the flavors. And with BUMPSUIT too, we have a collectible, and you can choose like the color of our next baby carrier or a product or a name of something. So it's really awesome to engage community that way. And I am a huge fan of Joggy. It's the best. I actually, like, when you were talking about doing another brand, I was thinking about if you were ever going to do apparel for Joggy. And I think, like, I mean, just look at the branding.
It's nice, right?
The apparel, like, I kind of can envision it. You could do Joggy apparel.
I know. I think
really cool.
Like, Joggy becomes energy broadly, right? So
everywhere.
The best running short, but I think we'll do it in
Amazing.
capsules that are intended to sell out.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Because I remember in the past being like,
Drop models. Drop
models are great.
It's a great business.
But we ended up with like way too many pink flamingo leggings, and like that's like scarred on me forever. I'm like, I never want to do that again. Like, I'd much rather have too few.
Yeah.
Right? Because they just sit there and then they're like this little demon on your shoulder.
They are, and it costs money for a product to sit.
Yes,
like,
totally.
BUMPSUIT's always sold out, and it's so great.
Yes.
But it's also not at 3 years, but I think we're growing faster than what we can kind of like, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like support from a supply chain perspective.
Yeah, but it's a good thing, but it's a bad thing too. But yeah, being sold out is great.
So one thing just to connect to the membership collectible that each of the brands have on TYB. If you're familiar with Outdoor Voices, we had this blue Doing Things hat, which essentially you got by showing up to one of our community events. And then you'd see people in the yoga studio or on the trail in this blue Doing Things hat, and it very much like symbolized that you were part of the community. And so people would be like, you know. And so now there's a digital version of that. You guys have, what do you call yours?
We call ours like our
your collectible.
Yeah. We call it the Bump Club collectible.
Yes, the Bump Club collectible, the Joggy Doggy. They essentially are the new versions in a digital format of that blue Doing Things hat that lives in your wallet and then gives you access into this brand's essentially world where you can start to influence things like colorways of the armadillo or give feedback on things or show up to events and get rewarded. And really for me, the future of brand building is two-part. It's about co-creation. So allowing people like the ones that showed up today to like have a voice and say in kind of the future of the brand.
Absolutely.
And then incentivization, which is rewards. And so if we think about like community of the past has been like on Instagram, but ultimately like as a brand, you don't have access to those, like the data of that community. You can see them, but you can't take them anywhere. And then from a user perspective, like the contribution is liking, which doesn't really give me much as a user. And so in this new model, like you were describing, if I'm picking from a line sheet, the next product for BUMPSUIT that I want, like I'm going to get rewarded Bump Club or BUMPSUIT coins that I then can go take and use on discounts to product or access to exclusive merch. And so really kind of the high level business model shift is going from direct to consumer, which is not direct in the sense that Facebook, Instagram are these middlemen or middle parties that you have to pay a lot to like acquire new customers.
For sure.
And instead connecting directly with your already excited fan base and incentivizing them directly to help you grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an exciting thing to have the possibility of like being on the board of a company through this platform. It's like you can have a say in the brands that you're buying from. Like that's powerful.
And like more access to the founder directly where like
I know you host these like Zooms.
Yeah, but whether it's like a physical version or a digital version, what we've found is like people's love for a brand, affinity for a brand, or emotional connection to a brand, which from a business perspective means more lifetime value. Or like longevity as a customer. Yeah. Like the more close that they can be or hear from the founder and like be reminded of the why and the mission, like the more that there's a flywheel created around it. So that strength and like bond between the brand and the customer goes like exponentially up when they have access to you. So that's something that we very much are focused on powering for brands through 280.
Yeah, and when you think about it, so like these big corporations that we're all up against, they wouldn't be able to do that because it's a numbers game purely. It's not a why. I think founders like us, we have such a powerful why behind what we're doing, and it's not even about the numbers. It's about how can we create change for the next generation, because we're not happy with what we got. It's like, how are we going to use these companies as a vessel for change?
Yeah, totally.
So that's awesome. So let's talk about like you as a mother and getting pregnant. So you got dissed basically from OV, which is not a great feeling. You've got these pregnancy hormones going on as well. Tell me about the road to meeting your beautiful daughter.
Yeah. It's funny. My 2 pregnancies were very different. So girl first and then boy.
Yeah.
And with Sonny, and it makes sense now knowing her, like I emotionally was on this like crazy surf trip of like hormones that were almost like depression state, which is not like something I'm all that familiar with. And so it was scary. And then my husband was on tour. The number one thing I noticed was, in looking back, I wasn't very in tune with, you know, planning out or making choices for like how I wanted to deliver and like what that would look like. Like that kind of got a backseat.
Yeah.
And so let's see, I think I'm just trying to fast forward
like,
to then.
Do you feel like you could even be present with your pregnancy with all of that going on at
No,
the same time?
but also like I was so hormonally out of my mind that like presence wasn't very fun.
Yeah.
I mean, was like, get me through this.
Yeah. I mean, I relate to that. I think a lot of us can. I'm like, how did my husband even stay with me?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank God Mark was on tour. Sonny, I wasn't physically sick whatsoever. It was really the emotional thing. And then Champy, I remember driving Sonny to gymnastics being like 10 weeks pregnant and just like, whoa, throw up out. And I'm like, I don't get morning sickness. And then like, what the hell was that? Oh, I get it now. And
it's amazing how different each one can be.
So wild. And so the physical aspect was different, but at 12 weeks, it then became like the easiest thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't someone that like loved being pregnant. I love having the kids, but like 9 months kind of with someone else inside you is tough.
It's pretty alien, right? It's kind of a weird, and yeah, it is tough. And I remember I was away at the time, and I remember you going into labor and you had some complications. Yeah. And you just said, pray for us. Yeah. You're so like light with your, you know, intentions with everybody. And I remember you just feeling this like immense like energy to, okay, I'm with you now. Yeah. I'm not where I am. But you were just like, hey guys, pray for us. Like, it wasn't like this long story about what was going on. You were just like, pray for us. And I was like, hey, what happened? Yeah, it was totally wild. And I feel like now that I've had kids and people are more willing to share their birthing stories, which in a lot of cases are quite traumatic or extreme. But I was getting induced at 39 and a half weeks. And again, I wish I had... That was pre-planned? That was pre-planned. Okay. It was that for a reason? No, again, like the issue with everything going on kind of work-wise, like I didn't research it enough. Are you on maternity leave at this point? I didn't go on maternity leave. So you're still working? Yes, I'm still working like literally right up until the day. Wow. But at 30, like a lot of doctors want to induce you at 39 and a half weeks. And they're like, that's the perfect time for them to come out. But I think it's more about like, it's convenient to schedule, you know what I mean? And like, know when the baby's coming. Yeah. So I went in on under a doctor's recommendation. Yes. Okay. I think November 20th. And they gave me Pitocin to like start to get things going. And then like 9 hours later, nothing was going. The cervix wasn't open whatsoever. And I stayed the night, and then the next day they're like, okay, we're going to send you home. Like, certainly not ready. There's like no sign of going into labor. Like I to this day have never felt a contraction and have 2 kids. It's crazy. And so they're like, we're going to send you home. But actually before that, we're going to try a balloon method to like see if we can open the cervix. And so they put the balloon in, and it's like this very old school looking thing, like, shit, I wish I would have been in more of like a present mind to not do this. But they put it in, and then they immediately lost Sonny's heartbeat. Oh, and so they go,
on all fours, and they had asked my mom, my aunt, to step out while they like did the balloon thing.
Gosh.
And so they're sitting in the hallway, and I come flying out, and like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I had just gone from you're going home, like not ready, to like, oh my God, we need to get to the emergency room. And so they get us in there, and they just have to cut as soon as possible.
Oh
so
gosh.
no anesthesia, no. Yeah, so I just remember the last thing I remember was just like all these people in their scrubs, obviously, but just cutting, and then like a needle in my leg.
Oh, babe.
It was so nuts, but it was called, supposedly what happened was a fetal maternal hemorrhage, where they say it was going to happen regardless of the balloon. It's, logically that doesn't make sense. I would imagine it was due to the balloon, but Sonny pushed 50% of her blood back into me, which is dangerous for both of us. And then supposedly she hadn't had oxygen for like a minute. So they rip her out. They put me into someplace with the morphine guy. I wasn't conscious whatsoever. And then they immediately bring Sonny to the Dell Children's Hospital. And they're like, she has, like, firstly,
totally
we don't think
hospital.
she's gonna, to the totally different hospital. I was not at all there, so I don't remember this. Mark was with her. But I ended up having to stay at the hospital for 4 days without Sonny, just like trying to get back to somewhat normal. And then Sonny ended up at the NICU. One, they didn't think she was going to live. Two, once she started to show signs of like surviving, they were like, she certainly has brain damage. We just got to warn you and prepare you for this. And so Sonny's over at the NICU, and I end up getting over there like 4 days later and seeing her, and they put her on a process called cooling. And so I think like we're so lucky that this is in existence now, but for anyone that's had sort of brain or head trauma, they cool your body down to like 68 degrees. And so when I saw her, it was so cool. When I walked in, like she started cooing or something from many doors down, but you see her and she has literally 100 little,
yeah, I remember the
what
photos.
Are they called?
Yeah, the little pads.
Sensors and pads.
Yeah.
And she's being cooled. And so they have her just in her diaper. And I have this photo now. I'm like, holy shit, like that's such a, I don't know, like powerful photo, knowing now where Sonny's at.
Yeah.
And so we spent 2 weeks in the NICU, and that certainly makes you grateful for everything we have in life, because that's a rough place to be. People have it much worse. Anyway, like we're there. We stayed in the Ronald McDonald room, Mark and I, which was kind of funny. And on Thanksgiving, she went for an MRI and somehow came out completely clear. So the cooling had worked phenomenally, and like we're so grateful and lucky that she came out that way. But that all, yes, was quite a very much traumatic experience, and like we're one of the lucky ones to end up where we are today with no brain damage, very much a lively and headstrong, stubborn little thing.
Yeah. What about Champy? How did you labor with Champy after experiencing that?
Champy was also a C-section.
Yeah. Did you scheduled it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was
a
way
scheduled
different.
C-section.
It was scheduled.
You weren't scheduling the C-section with Sonny.
No,
that was an
like,
emergency.
Get her out as fast as possible.
So this is a whole different way.
This one was planned, and being conscious for it was like almost worse for me. Like not painful, not painful in the same way, but just very strange. Like you can hear the cutting and the ripping of the baby out, and like I don't know, the moment that they cut, like I felt a bunch of pressure in my shoulders. It's just such a wild experience, whether you go naturally or through C-section. And
it really is.
You don't have, what would I say? You don't have any understanding for it, like in terms of how big of a moment that is, until you do it.
Yeah, and also like each one can be different.
Yeah, totally.
There's like, what would you do? What would you want to know before, your experiences that you feel like could have helped?
Yeah, I mean, more focus for me. And so there's, I'm kind of the type of person that loves to be busy. Otherwise I'll like chew a paw off or something. So like,
I'm the same.
But I've heard other stories where you have, your midwife or doula in with you.
For
and
sure.
you can push back. There's a little more friction in terms of like what the choices are rather than like, I don't know what else. Like the doctor says this and then you're like, okay, I better do that.
Yeah.
And so I think having that other person on your team that's like well-versed and educated is how I would go about it differently.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we're here, getting on the same page as your body and spirituality before like really prepping for birth, but not in the way of like, do this class and all these, it's kind of like a deeper wisdom, which we're trying to tap into. So
but pure wisdom, like I now share my story, and I wish I would have asked others.
For sure.
Like that's such an unlock.
Yeah,
with what you guys are doing with the Bump Club and the village, like pure stories and advice, and everyone's gonna ultimately own their own decision, but it's so helpful.
It's
to
like if we lived in a village, everyone would know everything about everyone.
Totally.
And then you would be like, oh, that's not, all of this is normal, whatever's going on. And you would just be informed and you would make your decisions about what resonates with you. But you would also have like this innate wisdom that also spans, from everybody else's stories in your village. And we're hoping to create that for our community. And so thank you for sharing your story. I know you're running out of time, so I wanted to ask you before we ended this segment if there were words of wisdom that you feel like will be valuable for our community. It could be something completely unrelated to childbirth, and also some words of wisdom that your mom and dad gave to you. Yeah,
I think if I were to distill like the one thing that has helped me the most in life that I now am very focused on with the kids, it's instilling confidence, and that's both like physical and emotional, mental, like a foundational capability of like walking, running, biking, swimming, but like just physically having tried a lot, so you're comfortable. And then I bring the kids into a lot of things that I do, and I essentially like want them to see the way that I kind of interact throughout life, etc. But I think it comes down to like raising confident kids. And there's many ways to do it, but that's something that my mom was so good at and has very much set me up to like go after life the way that I have. And so it comes back to 2IB, which is funny. Try your best, baby.
Yeah.
Everything that you do, you got this. Like that's just the way that I was wired. And so like 100% belief in your kids and making sure that that's communicated and they get it, and anything that they're going to go do like goes a very long way. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you guys. Awesome. Thanks, Tai. Thank you for listening to the Village podcast, normalizing conversations and experiences in pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, and motherhood. We are here to serve, and we really want to hear from you. So feel free to share, comment, like, and subscribe to keep this village growing. We are eternally grateful for you being with us and sharing space today.